Oh, man.
Do you have your Wi-Fi on in that?
No, I got it off. What?
Something, when you put it towards that, like it creates a lot of...
Yeah, no, I seen that. I heard it.
Cody, can you hear us? Did you just type that?
What's that?
Yep.
No?
All right.
Get off our page, Cody. All right, we got good mics. Perfect. We're all good to
start. It's been a struggle lately.
Start to a good show.
Good afternoon, Tom.
There we go. Got Tim in here. Cool. Let's fire this thing off, huh?
We're back.
We're back with another show. Nomex Effect. I'm Sean Langdon.
J.R. Todd.
We're got another good show for you guys this week. Got a lot of things to talk about. Talk about the last couple races, Virginia, Bristol. A lot of cool things. Saw a lot of differences between the two racetracks. But I mean, we're excited to be back. We're excited to keep the show going for you guys. We've had a lot of good feedback from the fans about the show. So there's a lot of cool topics, a lot of cool things that have been going on. We recently actually launched our website.
Yeah, we're getting more and more legit now. You can go to our website. For those that are listening that don't want to be on Facebook, you can watch the show on nomexeffect.com. All the past episodes, even the videos are on there. There's a link to SoundCloud, iTunes. Go on there and buy some merch.
Yep, got the store going. We actually had a couple. We just got it launched just the other day, and we had a few emails. So people have been buying the cool merchandise. We'll get that out as soon as we possibly can. Obviously, in between races, do the best job that we can.
It's kind of tough having 4 in a row.
It is. But you know, I really like having the 4 in a rows, because I think that as a driver, the mentality that you get in, it's whether you have a good race, you're able to carry the momentum, but whether you have a bad race, you're able to kind of brush that off and get right back out to the racetrack. So I think that I like the 4 in a rows. Yes, it can be hectic. Yeah, the crew guys, they got a lot more work to do, but I think as a driver, I think it kind of keeps you in that zone.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for having 4 in a row as a driver. I'd like to have 10 in a row as a driver. I just meant as far as doing our show and the logistics of that, and
yeah,
getting the website up and going and selling T-shirts and hats. It gets a little complicated then.
Yeah, it does. But we do it. We love to give the fans an opportunity to have a voice. Obviously, we love what we do. The passion's there. We do this because this is what we're born into doing. We've done it our whole lives. But having the show, it gives the fans an opportunity to voice an opinion. And we're just here trying to be the voice in the middle, give you guys the topics to talk about during the week. On a Wednesday afternoon when you guys are at lunch, be able to have these topics of conversation. So what we try to do is we obviously at the racetrack we're kind of in our own zone driving the race cars, but during the week bring up these topics, bring up the goods and the bads of the sport. But either way, it gives people an opinion. It gives people an opportunity to talk about what they like, what they don't like, ways we can improve, things that we can progress on. But it's also, just like we were talking earlier, it's the opportunity for people to create an opinion, whether it's a good opinion or a bad opinion. Everybody's got one, and it gives people an opportunity to pay attention, to watch, to get an opinion, and to talk about it.
Yeah, that's. I think that's one of the main reasons that we started this show. Right, was to relay to the fans things that aren't coming across to the TV show or NHRA's website, things like that, not getting through during interviews. At least we can relay what's going on or what we think's going on and have our opinion, and you guys can have your opinion, and it creates a cool discussion. We don't want our sport to be boring. That way, I mean, you're going to lose ratings if it's pretty vanilla. But also, people might take it as, well, you guys are bitching and moaning about everything or pointing out all the negatives of the sport. Like, no, that's not really what's going on. But if there are some things that we don't agree with, like, we're going to speak up about it.
Yeah, but it, like I said, it's we do a lot of at the racetrack time out at the ropes, signing autographs for the fans. So obviously we talk a lot with the fans about the races, and obviously everybody's out there because we love drag racing, and we want to see the sport progress. We want to take that sport to the next level where not only are we out there doing what we love to do, but we're putting on a good show for the fans. We're giving the fans what they pay, giving their money's worth. And I think that we've seen some good racing. We've seen some good side-by-side racing. I think that, obviously a big topic's been the difference in the track prep lately, but it's not something that, we definitely want to dwell on, but I think it's definitely a heavily discussed thing amongst the fans. It's something that the fans always come up to us at the ropes, and they're always talking about and what's different about it and how it affects the teams, how it affects the cars, how it affects us driving the cars. So, we want to talk about that. We want to, what you guys are interested in, that's what we want to talk about. So, another thing that we do is send in your questions. Obviously, send in your questions now. Send in your questions, go to our website. Even if it's, not on a day that we have the show, you send in the questions, we'll get to it on the next show.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, this track prep deal, it's like almost like beating a dead horse at this point. How many races into it are we now? 6, 7?
Yeah, 6 or 7, yeah.
And it hasn't changed, and it most likely isn't going to change anytime soon. Do we want it to change? Like, yeah, we'd like for it to get a little better. What I want for is the track prep to be compensated for the tracks that we go to that need it. Like, not every track's the same. There's 2 lanes. They look flat, but every racetrack's different.
Yeah, definitely. We saw some big differences just from going to Virginia over to Bristol. But yeah, a lot of tracks, a lot of things that's not really seen on TV is the characteristics of every track that we go to. There's some tracks that have wider grooves than others. There's some tracks that have a very narrow groove. There's some tracks that will be crowned, which will be sloped off towards the wall, so it'll try to drive you
water off.
Yeah, exactly. And it'll try to drive you towards the wall. Some tracks will kind of try to suck you in towards the center line. So it's a constant, I say battle, but not really, but constant battle for the drivers, for the crew chiefs, for the track guys, to where we're constantly going to every track. They go in early. I mean, one thing that we were talking about earlier is the involvement with TRD that's come in with our race team. I mean, we have guys dedicated to the track. That's all they do all day long. They're out there on the track giving us track temperatures, projected track temperatures, where every bump, nook, and cranny is on that racetrack.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, without their involvement with JP and Chad Head, who works with them hand in hand, I mean, we definitely, I don't think, would be having the type of success that we're having now just because of the information that they're giving us with the racetrack. I mean, Chad is out there working a machine that's provided from TRD, right?
Mm-hmm.
That, I mean, it can tell us every bump on the track, where they're at, if the track's crowned. I mean, all these little things are helping us drive the cars because we know where we need to be in the groove, which side of the groove, and this and that, and it means a lot to us.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of things that just behind the scenes that go on, like talking about the characteristics of the track is, there will be times where we may do our burnout on the inside of the lane, and then we'll end up running on the outside of the lane. But it's kind of up to you as a driver, knowing that you're starting on the outside of the lane, and if you progress going in a straight line on the outside of the lane, that you're eventually going to run out of real estate and probably be driving out of the groove. So these are things that we work on as drivers for each track that we go to. Of, if, say for instance, if you're starting on the outside of the lane, that you have to be back in the center of the lane by a certain part of the track. So this is where TRD and with JP and Chad, where this really comes into hand, is because they're out there with grip meters and knowing where the track is potentially better or worse, or if there's potential bumps in certain areas of the track, to where you have to say, there's certain tracks where they'll say, hey, we're going to start you on the outside of the lane. You have to be back in the center by 100 feet. There may be some tracks that it's a little bit more forgiving, to where you can eventually kind of gradually get it back in by 200 or 300 feet. So it's a constant work in progress of different things that we're trying to do to, obviously, with how narrow some of the grooves are, and with the lack of track prep that we have right now and the hotter temperatures, it's very, very critical to be in the perfect spot in the lane.
Yeah, and with the track prep deal that's been going on, like, my biggest complaint is I just want the groove to be wider. I feel like it doesn't need to be as narrow as it is, and that's kind of by product of them. Like, that's initially like where they're working the groove, then in time cars start trying to stay in that area, and a groove gets built up there. And then as the weekend goes on, you talk about where we line up. A lot of that has to deal with, say, the sportsman cars or the pro stock cars or even the fuel cars. They'll peel up rubber off the starting line, creating bald spots, and that kind of dictates where we do the burnout and line up. I mean, there's times you might be a half a car to the inside or the outside of the groove, and then Chad comes in like, hey man, you got to let it go, and then it'll pull you back over, which it's hard to tell yourself that in a funny car. Like, don't steer it, but you got to steer it a little bit.
Yeah, and that's one thing through time that I've learned is, there's times that you'll look down the track and the groove will be straight down the track, and then there's some times where the groove will actually maybe run a little bit to the inside. So it's just I guess a common thing that you would just think that you drive towards where the groove is. Well, the reason why the groove is that way is because the lane may suck you into the inside of the lane, so you could almost just hold the wheel straight and it'll eventually bring you back into that groove. But if you're steering it over before that and then it starts to pull you in, then all of a sudden you're going to find yourself completely to the inside of the groove, potentially up against either the wall or the center line.
Yeah, and one place we did not have to worry about any of this, I feel like, was Richmond.
Richmond was awesome.
That place was like a sheet of glass.
Yes, and I was so glad to go back. I know you'd raced there a couple times, I believe, and my first year was 2009. That was the only time that I raced there. But going there was awesome, man. Like, just the fans were badass.
It was packed all 3 days.
Yeah, and they were so excited, enthusiastic. I mean, I know that a lot of them were up there talking about betting in the grandstands, betting on the racers, and had a couple of them come over to me and high-five me because I won them a little bit of money. And but it's just, that enthusiasm that you get from the fan base there is awesome, and the amount of work that they went into getting that track as nice as it was. I mean, just a complete awesome job by that staff there. I can't wait to go back next year.
Yeah, I just wish we went there later in the year and could really utilize the track and throw down, because it's definitely the nicest surface that we've raced on all season long. It's, I think, a quarter mile of concrete. And for those track owners or looking to build a track or, anything like that, I get with Tommy Franklin and everybody there at Virginia Motorsports Park, because they did it right. And the fans, that's one of the few places where they come up and thank you for being there, which that makes you feel welcome and you're excited,
Yeah, no, and I mean, we get that quite a bit throughout the year. I know another track that's really like that is when we go up into Epping. But yeah, like I really think that if we went to Virginia Motorsports Park at the end of the year, where you had cooler conditions, because the air is really good there, you're able to make a lot of power, crazy power. The barometer's awesome there. The density altitude's great. It's a little bit of a dry atmosphere. It was a little warm and humid when we were there.
Yeah.
But with that track surface and you get to where you have cooler conditions, I have no question that every record would be in jeopardy.
Yeah, I think it's almost safe to say like that would be the quickest and fastest track on the tour by far. Yeah,
absolutely. So we just got to say thank you guys. We thoroughly enjoyed going there. We were excited to come back. We cannot wait for next year. If you guys have an opportunity for a schedule change, put it in the countdown, because I bet you'd have some badass racing in the countdown there. Yeah, and that's another topic is, heading to Norwalk this weekend. They also resurfaced their track. So I'm really excited to get there to see how smooth that is. I've heard some good reviews from a lot of sportsman racers that have raced there. So that's another track that you get to cooler conditions. I know it's going to be hot, but Friday night session could be really good.
Yeah, and I haven't looked at the schedule to see what time we run yet, but usually it's 2 late sessions there, which that means Funny Car will get 1 dedicated night session if that's the case, and we could definitely have a chance to throw down. But do I think it'll be as good as Richmond? Who knows? Because usually the air is not as good in Norwalk as it is in Richmond, but it could
Correct.
be.
Yeah, no, and I mean, the good thing about Norwalk is even if you have a bad weekend, you can still get the $1 ice cream.
Yeah, a pound of ice cream.
Yeah.
For $1.
For $1.
And they have some badass fireworks.
Yeah, they do actually put on a really good show. Typically, what is that, Friday night they do that?
I think so.
Yeah, so the Bader family does a great job promoting their track, promoting the sport. That's another track that the fan base is awesome. It's always packed there. And we can tell a difference. It's because when we're not only on the starting line, but a lot of times you're kind of in a different zone when you're on the starting line, so you're not necessarily looking up at the grandstands, admiring it all. Sometimes you do, but majority of the time it's when we're trying to get back to the track or get back to our pit area after a run, and there's just a sea of people in the pits.
Right. Yeah, and I don't know. To me, the similarities between Richmond and Norwalk is the people that run those facilities are passionate about their racetrack and the sport and do a good job promoting those races, and that's why they get the attendance that they do.
Yeah, absolutely. I know another great track that does that, Vandermeer's.
Absolutely.
They do a great job. That track's always packed. The stands are always you see a lot of people standing, and that's only because there's no seats left.
Right. Yeah, they are definitely passionate about racing, and they know a lot about prep on a racetrack also. Like they'll go above beyond to make sure like that place is in tip-top shape when we get there, I guarantee it. And they have the cooling system, which that place is usually really hot. We saw track temps in Bristol around 140 degrees. And I remember the starting line would be like that in Denver, but not anymore because they got the cooling system under there, which they can kind of dictate, the track temp, which I think is awesome.
Yeah, and it definitely helps. I know a lot of these cars is just with the top fuel cars, it's getting them off the starting line and getting them kind of through the transition 100, 200 feet and getting that momentum built up. I think we saw when we were in Houston, a lot of the cars were running well. It wasn't with big speeds, but it was because the starting line area was good and they were able to apply a lot of power to where they were able to get the car really accelerating hard, and then you kind of race first to a certain point on the track. But so what they do in Bandimere is completely awesome. It's with that whole cooling system. I know it's not cheap to do something like that, but for them to do that, to put on a better show, it just speaks volumes about them.
Yeah, and I'm not saying every track needs to be smooth as glass, like flypaper where you're glued in and this and that. Because it's cool that each track has a different characteristics. That's where you might perform better at one track compared to the other. But like last week, like that was pretty intense. Some of the stuff you had to deal with there.
Yeah, it was. It was hot. It was bumpy.
Cars really bumpy.
Cars were all over the place. I actually had a run, one of the qualifying runs, where the car actually made a move to the outside fairly early in the run, and I was probably about 400 or 500 feet, and I already had my left hand over my right hand, where I had almost full input steering into it, trying to just hold that line, and then the thing hits the bump, my right hand comes off the wheel, and I'm holding on one-handed, trying to get this thing to the finish line. And I remember thinking after I shut the car off, was like, well, that was pretty stupid. I don't know, but it's just you're in that race mode where you're not thinking to shut the car off, even though that's the smart play. But luckily, I was able to get it to the finish line. Nothing bad happened. Just might have had to change my drawers a little bit, but there was definitely a lot of it was a different style of racing in Bristol last weekend with the hotter track temperatures and what the crew chiefs were having to do to accommodate it with the different track prep. I think we saw a little bit more side-by-side racing. It wasn't as quick as what we were used to. Yeah, it was a little bit of a progression. Not really what we're used to. I mean, when you're seeing side-by-side 4.0 dragsters and side-by-side 420 funny cars, but it was still kind of neat to see some of the Mike Salinas made a final round.
Right.
It's always neat to see other guys make guys that aren't typically in the finals. It kind of opens it up a little bit, but it's definitely, man, it's hard. It's hard for these crew chiefs to make those adjustments.
It's hard as a driver to be able to keep that thing in a narrow groove with the lesser prep, especially when you're going over the bumps and that thing might be drifting one way or the other, and you got the wheel cocked, then it goes over a bump. Well, it's in the air and you're steering it, it ain't doing anything.
Yeah.
Then it might come down and shoot you one way if you got the wheel turned. Like it's like a fine line, and it's more of a guessing game than anything, I would say.
Yeah, I think there definitely was a lot of guessing games out there. I mean, from the crew chiefs to the drivers to trying to how you address the lane. I mean, I didn't really see much in the lane choice. Obviously, every crew chief's going to have their own opinions on which lane's better. A lot of it, I think, was how the starting line looked. But I felt like you could be, even if you didn't have lane choice, you could be put in the other lane, and it wasn't like you were going to lay up any more than what you already were.
Right, like most of the dragsters first round were going right lane, which I feel like after the first couple, it's usually monkey see, monkey do at that point.
Correct.
And then we were third pair in funny car, and the first two funny cars with lane choice went right lane. Well, we had not gone down the right lane through qualifying. We went down the left lane both runs. So Jono and Todd, and then they get with JP and Chad, like, let's go left. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. So we go in the left lane, win first round, get out the top end. They're asking, why'd you guys choose the left lane? Well, if we had our choice, we'd probably take the return road. But there, like I said, there's nothing, like, there's no, I don't want to say there's no difference between the lanes, but there's not an advantage from one or the other. They're kind of equal.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you saw multiple winners out of both lanes, and it makes for good side-by-side racing. We saw some whole shot wins, which was, kind of neat to see, being able to have, equally prepped lanes for what that's worth, to where drivers can play a role in creating a difference in the outcome of the race.
Right, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say there were a lot of pedal fast or anything like that. They were just kind of cars laboring to get down the track, just because you have to back them off so much when you're forced with those conditions. I mean, these things are making 11,000 horsepower, and you're definitely not utilizing all of it there.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of, I guess if you look back the last couple years where the track prep was different, I think that they were, it was still a hard track to get down.
Correct.
In per the conditions, with having 130 plus degree track temp. So a lot of times you would see dragsters going mid-high 380s or so. You'd see funny cars going, probably in like the low 40 range, around that. So, with the differences, you may lose a tenth to a tenth and a half on the ET side of things. But I mean, regardless, man, it's awesome to see side-by-side racing. That's what the sport's about. Regardless of, as a driver, you want to go fast, though. It's hard to kind of accept, like, hey, we know what the capabilities of these cars are doing. Obviously, there's some safety restrictions that we have to abide by. You don't necessarily want to go blasting back to quarter mile going 360 miles an hour. But, the opportunity's there for, so many years where it's building horsepower and it's trying to make these cars quicker and faster, to where the mentality's completely 180'd to where it's get the cars down the track.
That's kind of the issue I have, is we're advertising and promoting the world's quickest and fastest cars, the fastest cars in the world. But now we're trying to reel them back to where they might not be the fastest cars in the world. It's just, I don't know, it's kind of frustrating. I think in the end, hopefully by the end of the year, we're talking about how they got it all worked out.
Yeah, and I think even on the same progression, because like you go to Chicago and Friday night,
a torrents threw down.
Yeah, but that's per the cooler track conditions. Regardless, it's tough on a 130-degree track. I think that towards the end of the year, if you start seeing cooler track conditions, you're definitely going to see those quicker times.
Right.
But
another issue I have, I keep saying one issue, but with the conditions that we're dealt with now, there's maybe one car in both classes that is performing better than everybody else. And then when you go to somebody saying like, hey, like, we're not happy with how things are going, like, well, this person has it figured out. Well, yeah, they do, but maybe these conditions kind of play into their hand as well.
Yeah, and I think we've seen a lot of that throughout the years. Is you'll have some guys that just, you have tracks that kind of come to your tune-up.
Right.
So you'll have guys that they're able to throw down in the cooler conditions, but then they go to the summer tracks and then they struggle because their cars, it can't accommodate that 120, 130 degree racetrack. I think we saw a little bit of that with Clay Milliken this year. Every time we get into a good session on a Friday night session, he was blasting off great runs, and then as the track conditions got warmer, they struggled a little bit. But that's something that I know that Grubby's obviously done a great job, and Clay's done a great job with. Where they've turned their car around this year is really trying to focus on getting that hotter race tune-up. They know they can throw down, but
right.
It's making those changes to get that hotter track set up.
Yeah, and that's kind of like I heard, Jono and Todd talking this past weekend. It's like, hey, like, there's no sense in complaining about this stuff anymore. We're dealing with it. Now we got to like figure out how to make it work. So I think more and more guys are going into that boat. And you're seeing cars go down the track. Now, like you said, they're making side-by-side runs, just probably not what everybody wants to see. But eventually you'll learn to deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, there's some cool things. I mean, obviously, you got, Steve Torrance has done a great job this year. He's got a pretty good lead. Courtney's done a great job this year. She's got a pretty good lead. But you really kind of see, I mean, there's a lot of close battles going on in the points. Just where they're grouped together. You're not. Yeah, those guys have been the exception where they've really excelled in these conditions. But I think Tony winning last weekend, and then seeing Mike Salinas go to the final round as well. Ron Capps is back. He's driving good. He's driving like a machine last weekend, killing the tree.
Right.
Tobler's doing a good job with their tune-up as well. But this is kind of the time of the year where you kind of start to transition your mentality of, okay, like we need to figure this out. We need to test a little bit into we need to kind of start really getting our tune-ups confined to where we have a good handle on it. And because we have Norwalk this weekend, then we go to Epping, and then it's a Western Swing. But really, once you get to the Western Swing, you don't really have many opportunities to go out there and test.
No, I feel like now people start maybe testing at Brainerd to get ready for Indy.
Right.
And then after Indy, like, it's game on after that.
Yeah, because you get into the countdown. So you start to look at, there's a pretty tight battle going right now in the funny car class.
Yeah, you're a part of it.
Yeah, and but you look at like the 8th spot to the 13th spot, Cruz Pedregon, John Forrest, and Bob Tasca, and I, and Yanni Lindbergh and Tim Wilkerson. And there's some pretty good cars and some big names that are just battling for that 10th spot. That I like to see. I think it's pretty cool that you don't just have the guys battling for first, but you can make a story out of just trying to get some top quality cars into the top 10.
Yeah, I mean, all of those cars are capable of going out and winning, each week, and now it's kind of evened it up to where it's more in their favor to go out and win those races, because the guys that win the races when it's throwdown conditions, they've kind of fallen back into all of our hands, I would say, except other than Courtney. Like, she has a big lead now, which I'm okay with that. We still have a chance to move up to second if we can, be successful throughout the Western Swing and what have you. But once the countdown starts and the points reset, like, we'll see, who's good and who's not then.
Yeah, I mean, you look at where you're at. You're 4th in the points and 2 rounds behind Beckman in second place. But, I mean, between Beckman and Height, you and Caps and Hagen, I mean, what's kind of neat is having multiple drivers grouped together like that, where you have a couple good races, you move right on up. You have a couple bad races, well, then the pressure starts to get on you.
Right. I think that's why, Courtney's been so successful, is like, she goes out there and throws down in qualifying, and then, allows herself to not, they can make a mistake first round generally and get away with it. Like, somebody's not picked them off, to where everybody behind there, like, they got some first round losses in there.
Yeah, and I think if you look at a lot of times how the ladders are set, you never have an easy draw.
Right.
But you have a lot of times when you're qualified in the 6 to 11 range, with having realistically 12, 13 top running teams that run the circuit throughout the year in the funny car class. When you qualify in that 6 to 11 range, you got 4 really tough rounds of racing.
Yep.
And you may have a draw first round where you could potentially get one of the guys that may have missed the Friday night session. I think right now the Friday night session is probably the most critical session there is for your qualifying order. That probably sets at least the top 8 for Sunday generally for lane choice. So it's right now it's really critical to make a good run on Q1 to where you can get towards the back of the pack for Q2 to be able to make that good run Q2 to get lane choice on Sunday.
Right, yeah. I think this past Saturday in Bristol, there was only one car that improved on their qualifying spot, and that was Hagen, and I'm not sure if he qualified in the top half or not.
Yeah, well, I believe he actually, I was 9th, and then he bumped me back to 10th, so he ended up number 9.
So yeah, like, it's, like you said, a Friday night run, that's more and more crucial as the summer, as we get deeper into the summer, for sure.
Yeah, and then typically on Saturday, it's, you're in the afternoon, so it's a little bit of the hotter conditions, so you won't be able to run as well. But a lot of times that kind of goes into the little bit of testing mode for some of the crew chiefs to also maybe test something or to maybe work on your tune-up for
Sunday.
For Sunday, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's where I'm not a huge fan of the 2 late sessions, Friday and Saturday, because at least if you make a good run Friday, which you should, you can work on your race day setup on Saturday, to where Chicago, we had 2 late runs, and then you go right in the first round, 11 o'clock Sunday. Like, we haven't run that all day in this, the past 2 days in the sun, so it's kind of a crapshoot.
Yeah, and it's definitely, a lot of times it becomes a little bit of a guessing game of how hard do you really want to push. I mean, if you like I said, you're in the middle of the pack. You get a really tough draw first round. You know that the cars that are qualified towards the bottom are obviously going to be pushing to run faster. So you're, as a faster car, you're a little bit in that mode of, do I try to push my car as well? Do I lay up a little bit? How hard do I want to really push this? Obviously, there's some tracks that both lanes are pretty equal, but there's some tracks where there may be one lane that's better than the other.
Well, yeah, like even if you're at a track, let's say Richmond, where both lanes are equal, to me, like, you still want lane choice no matter what, because you don't know if somebody's going to go out there and murder a lane on Sunday and they can't get it cleaned up because they don't have time to scrape it or something like that. Well, then it is a one-lane track, and you want lane choice. Yeah.
Obviously, it's always nice to have that option on Sundays. Is be able to, you kind of control your destiny maybe a little bit more, where you can pick and choose what you want. But going into the countdown and how the points are, I think you see, we've seen this a lot of times, is you see a lot of the years you always have like that one car that seems to kind of separate themselves from the field a little bit, and they run good in the season, but it's not necessarily always the case when they go to the countdown.
Right. I feel like the last 2 or 3 years it's been that way, especially in the funny car class. I remember the year that Dell won, like, Beckman was wearing them out before the countdown.
Mm-hmm.
Then, it seemed like Dell and those guys, Jono and Nicky, they got it figured out around Indy and what have you, then went on a tear during the countdown. Then last year, like, Caps was wearing everybody out throughout the summer.
Right.
Then Robert, got it going at the right time. But those guys are still good in the countdown. It's just they're not wearing everybody out like they were earlier in the year.
Yeah, because, I mean, when you get to a point where you have 6 races, losing one, you don't really have many opportunities for mistakes. So losing, if you're down 6 to 10 in the points and you go to the first race of the countdown and you lose first round, I mean, you're not only the 80 points behind that you started, but now it really puts you in a hole where if one of the top guys win, now you're 140, 150 points potentially behind these guys, to where now you only have 5 races to make up.
Yeah, if you're at the bottom of the list, that you almost have to go into Charlotte winning the race to even have a chance.
Right, and we've seen that opportunity for a couple drivers, which is always creates for a great story of, where they started, barely got into the countdown or what have you, and then they were able to make a good run in the countdown to make a good run at that championship run at the last couple races.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it's designed to do. It's tough when you're at the bottom, though. I mean, it only takes that one first round hiccup to end it for you right there, and you need help from the guys in front of you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know this is always like an interesting topic, and especially when it comes down towards the countdown time. But with how everything's structured, I know that how they used to have it was where they ran a couple races and then they cut it down again, right, and then they cut it down again. And I'd be curious to see kind of. I didn't race in that time of when they did that, but
the first year they did it,
right, I'd be kind of curious to see just a different playoff format of maybe breaking it down a couple more races.
I would kind of like to see that as well. I mean, that's basically what NASCAR has gone to, and if you cut it off like that, then maybe there's some kind of more reward for winning a race or number one qualifier, just some kind of bonus system, I think.
Right.
Where I guess it would give the guy, if he went out and won the race from 10th, maybe it'd move him up further than it initially would if he had some kind of bonus program to get him to that next cutoff point.
Yeah. I think I don't know. There's so many different ways of doing it, and I think that a lot of the fans have great ideas on that as well, just of different ways. Maybe doing something during the year where you, if you win a race or have some sort of additional countdown bonus points.
Bring back the national record.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Although that'd be pretty tough to.
Yeah, nowadays it's pretty much impossible. But
yeah, I mean it'd be pretty tough to get now. But yeah, I mean it's. You look at I guess the last couple years, it has gone down to Pomona, which is always exciting. I mean, it's when you're in those situations, it's like a whole new level of nervous and energy that you have. But I think it's always kind of a little bit like that heading into Indy, where it's like last year, fighting to get into the top 10.
Right.
Where you kind of have that, it's the make or break rounds. And I think those are the cool rounds that you really see a lot of these drivers that have a lot of runs under their belt that know how to handle that kind of pressure. It's like the same thing, like racing in the final in Indy, man. Like that's, what kind of pressure that is.
Yeah. It's like everything's on the line right here. Like, don't screw it up.
Yeah.
I remember watching the DHL guys when they won the championship. They had to run Beckman in second round of the semifinals. Like that was the championship right there.
Yeah.
Like it's all on the line right here.
That has to be like the coolest feeling ever.
I was acting like I won the race. I was so pumped for him. Like that was awesome.
Yeah, and those are the moments that like really define a lot of the drivers. But it's awesome to see a lot of the drivers how they excel through those and how they're able to get that energy that they get from their crew and their sponsors and everybody that's up there and everything that you've worked for, and it's all coming down to one hit of the throttle.
Yeah, exactly. Like right. All it takes is like for you to miss the tree by a few hundredths or whatever, and that can easily happen. That could be the end of your championship run.
Yeah. So yeah, we got coming up. We got Norwalk this weekend, and then we do a little road trip into New York.
Yeah, I'm kind of pumped about that. It's something that we did last year when we went from what was it, Englishtown to Epping?
Yeah.
So we stayed out, went to or was it? No, it was Epping to Englishtown. So we flew down to New York and stayed in Manhattan for 3 or 4 nights, and then went to Englishtown. So we decided we're going to do that again this year, minus Englishtown.
Yeah, and but it's always neat. Like as much as we do it, like with the traveling and going to the races and stuff, it's always neat to be able to have opportunities like that to go into the cities and to see the different cities and experience it. And obviously New York's kind of its right. own. So we enjoy it. So yeah, we're gonna head down there for a couple days and then go up to Epping. Epping's obviously a really cool track. I enjoyed it. They got some awesome golf courses up there. I like going up there a little bit early, go play some golf.
Got some good lobster.
Good lobster. Yep, absolutely.
If you like seafood.
Yeah. That's another track that we were talking about. Like the fans are awesome there, man. They come in and they come in early. They come in to watch the sportsman cars there.
Right. Yeah, it's packed when you get there in the morning. You're like, what are all these people doing here already? We don't run for another 5 or 6 hours.
Yeah. So love going there. And then we go to the Western Swing.
Yeah, as a crew guy, I feel like the Western Swing is almost the time of the year that you dread. But for me, like I love it just because Denver is one of the most unique tracks that we go to, how it's carved into the mountain like that. It's Denver itself, just the city, is an awesome city. Then the racetrack presents a challenge because, I mean, you're a mile in the air. It's hard to make power up there. But I like going there. I like the Bandamere family, the Chris boys. Like they're a fun group to be around. Then we go to Sonoma, which is probably one of my favorite tracks on the tour. I mean, that place, the staff there, like they treat you like family. Like they go out of their way to make sure that you feel like you're at home. Yeah.
Sonoma's one of my favorite tracks. I really enjoy going there as well. Just the scenery and the hills. And, and it's a good racetrack, fast racetrack. You make good power there. But it's always kind of, that, like what we were just talking about is, after the Sonoma race, we'll go do the wine tours, check out all the wineries.
Right, yeah, that's one of those races, like, or that time of the year, you just don't plan on coming home. Like, you stay out in between Sonoma and Seattle because you want to go experience some things that you can't do anywhere else in the country, like go to the wineries in Sonoma or go to Seattle and take in the city like that a day or two early. It's just it's a cool part of the season, and one you got to take advantage of.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's also, to me, it's kind of relaxing when you get to stay out and do some vacation type things like that.
Yeah, you're not in a hustle to get to the airport and
right,
get back and forth and all that. But yeah, I definitely like getting into that the Western Swing leading into the countdown, because that's really kind of the time of year you kind of see a lot of personality shift of just where you're out racing and it's kind of a week-to-week race, and then it's really like where you start seeing a lot more people get a lot more focused.
Right, people start tensing up more and more.
And you start seeing a lot more emotion out of the drivers and out of the crew chiefs, where it's a lot more is on the line. People are getting pretty fired up when they win. People are getting pretty dejected when they lose. But it's seeing that energy, it's seeing the passion and really come out of the drivers.
Absolutely, yeah, because usually by the end of the Western Swing where you're at in points and where you're going to be after Indy, generally. So yeah, like, hey, I need to go out and maybe win here or win Brainerd, or we're in a no-lose situation going into Indy. It's just it gets people all tensed up and focused and ready to rise to the occasion.
Yeah, it definitely makes for good racing, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I definitely think so.
So you did some sportsman racing in Bristol.
Kind of.
I mean, better than you did in Charlotte.
Yeah. Well,
it wasn't even your car, really.
Yeah. Yeah. See, I really enjoy driving two cars, having the opportunity to drive two cars. I mean, something that we had talked about last week is, I think, going out racing Super Comp, getting out there earlier in the morning, just getting your focus and mentality of not waiting till the end of the day to make a run. But I really enjoy running two cars, where I think it kind of increases my focus, where I'm not so focused on just one particular thing. I'm able to work around a couple different cars, do different things, keep your mind off of from overthinking anything.
Right.
So I think going to, like, in the bracket race, the same thing. You're just constantly making laps and making runs. Even though in the Super Comp class, going 180 miles an hour, it's not really anything like driving a funny car, but it's still racing. It's getting laps, getting hits at the tree, which I did not do third round. I was terrible. I flinched on the tree, was 90 on the tree, made just a bad run. But I'll tell you what, I was so mad about that Saturday night that I did that Sunday morning. I was up at 5:30 in the morning because I was still pissed about that run, and I was still mad, but I woke up. I would have been ready to race first round at 6 a.m.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably a good thing. Like, something like that motivates you to do better the next day in the other car.
Yeah, and I think that racing, man, Super Comp is such a tough class. It's some of the best. I think some of the best drivers are in that class. It's crazy how good these guys are on the tree. I mean, they're setting up 00 on the tree, so it brings a whole different element in there of consistency and doing the same thing, repetition every single time, staging right, staging shallow, understanding the car, understanding the setup, understanding the track, understanding the weather, making the changes to your throttle stop. I know a lot of the fans don't really like to watch that class. They don't really understand it, but
right.
I mean, some of the most intense racing comes from classes like that.
Absolutely, yeah. You're talking, thousandths of a second every pair down the track.
Right, every pair side by side, racing for thousandths of a second. I mean, you got guys taking a couple thou at the finish line, going 180 miles an hour, being able to judge 3 inches at the finish line.
Yeah, and that's another thing. It's almost like a guessing game, right? Like, you got to have trust in yourself that you hit the tree as best as you could, that your car is going to run what you think it is, and should you get there ahead of the guy or let him get there too quick?
Right. So a lot of it is on your setup and where you feel the setup on the car is. Index racing is some awesome racing. We're trying to get you to come out to do some bracket racing with us this year.
Well, yeah, like that. When you talk about there's a $500,000 bracket race to win next year, like, that got my attention.
Yeah, I mean a lot of these promoters are doing an awesome job creating these big money races. $500,000 to win. I know there's some races coming up. SFG's putting on that in Martin, Michigan, where it's $50,000 to win on a Friday, $125,000 to win on Saturday, $50,000 to win on Sunday. I mean, you're talking big money. That changes people's lives.
Right. Okay. So, for instance, this race that is talk, but it's definitely going to happen. What's the entry fee for something like that?
So I believe for they opened it up for the $500,000 to win. I believe it starts at $1,100, and then it kind of works its way up. Obviously, they're wanting to get the entries in so they can get the car counts. But they have like the $1 million race down in Montgomery. They have the Spring Fling Million, and those are $2,000 to enter. But you're getting 300 plus cars enter for these races, 9 rounds to win them. Typically, they'll pay out over $250,000 to win these races.
Yeah, that's pretty serious. That's a good sportsman racer. You go pick off a couple wins a year and like make a good living doing that.
Absolutely, and I think it's awesome that these promoters are giving people an opportunity and moving them around across the country to where they're giving everybody an opportunity at big money.
And the race next year is coming up. Like, there'll be multiple races within that weekend, right, to win a fair amount of money, other than a big purse of $500,000 to win.
Yeah. So the kind of the neat thing about a lot of these bracket races is when you race these is you get to go out there and you race on Friday, and they have buybacks. If you lose first round, you're able to buy back into the race. And a lot of times what the buyback does is it helps a promoter be able to put on the race to pay these big payouts. So that way you're not just creating a big entry fee for everybody. So by giving an opportunity, if you have car breaks first round, well, you have an opportunity to go fix it. And
right.
You're not hosed for the whole weekend.
Right.
Because not only do you have an opportunity to get back into that race on Friday, but you have a whole different race on Saturday and a whole different race on Sunday. So if you're potentially double entered, you have 2 chances every day to win, and opportunities if you did lose in the first round to where you can continue on by buying back.
So what you're saying is I need to save up some money, get with you and Bones, and enter some cars.
Yeah.
All right. Because, I mean, I saw your guys' stable. You got about 4 or 5 cars down there.
Yeah.
All capable of winning.
Yeah. I mean, it gives you an opportunity. I mean, I'm going to tell you this. If you get a car, don't think you're going to have an off weekend.
That's the problem. Sometimes I like having an off weekend, like going and seeing Chad Head hanging out at the lake on his pontoon boat. That's fun. That
was a lot of fun. We did do that last year. But, I mean, with all the bracket races going on across the country, I don't have an off weekend until Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I mean, I see where you're coming from, because you start ripping off wins at those things, it's pretty good living. You can win more over a course of time than what you would
obviously
at our races.
Yeah, obviously there's always the risk. I mean,
right.
You always have the risk of breaking a motor or what have you.
I've seen that.
Yeah, so did I. First qualifying run in Charlotte in Super Comp. But it's part of it.
Yeah.
I mean, And the neat thing about a lot of these companies is they really help out these sportsman racers. It's awesome to see a lot, just different companies throughout, from top to bottom, the amount that they give back to the racing community to help the sportsman racers by creating these contingency programs or doing a lot of giveaways at a lot of these bracket races. These companies want to utilize this stuff, and what a lot of these bracket racers have done, and what a lot of these promoters have done, is put this all together to where they create best losing packages or random drawings or giveaways to where they're giving out product from all of these companies.
Yeah, that's good. That's what draws in those guys, because they're the ones that support these tracks that we have all across the country and keep them going. Like, that's what I want to know. Why don't we have more of these big money bracket races, say, like in this area? Which, I guess Bowling Green isn't terribly far from here, but it seems like either you got to go there or Michigan maybe to.
Yeah. There's. I think right now the hot spot for a lot of the bracket racing is kind of like down like the southeast, but I think it's starting to kind of expand as more racers support it, and getting the car counts at these races. The promoters will put on the race,
right?
And as long as they're getting the attendance. But we've seen some of these races have 500 to 600 cars all entered in the same class racing against each other, which makes for crazy long days.
Right.
Start qualifying at 8 in the morning. You end up finishing up around 2 or 3 in the morning. But it's an endurance race. But man, it's awesome.
Yeah, I don't know if I could stay up for that. You need an energy drink sponsor for that.
Yeah.
Like, how? Okay, so like when you're doing that and you get up at 8 or 9 to make your one-time hit, and then you got first round, say like 10 or 11 o'clock. Like, does your adrenaline or anything like stay up like you would like in your fuel car like on a Sunday when you got 4 rounds of competition? Or you just kind of stay like even keel the whole time?
Yeah, I think with the bracket racing, it is staying a little bit more even keel. If you put heart rate monitors on us, I definitely think that you would see, pretty low, and then when we go make a run,
yeah,
they're spiking. But I think, a lot of it is, you could start to see a little bit of variance. I think, we've talked about this. Actually, we talked about this on our drive home from Bristol, is when you're racing and your adrenaline spikes up and then it goes down, you have those days that you just kind of feel like you got to pump yourself up to get a good reaction time. And then there's those days that you may be first pair in dragster and the national anthem's playing, and it's like you could just feel your heart beating through your chest and you're trying to take deep breaths to calm yourself down.
Right.
Which is that is probably one of the coolest things, from driving the dragster. But being first pair, man, that is an awesome deal. National anthem playing.
Yep.
And it's just, you see the guy coming down with the flag. Everybody standing up in the grandstands. That is, I feel like.
Yeah, you're kind of setting a tone for the day.
Yeah, that is one of the coolest things to ever experience as a driver.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Should we answer some questions?
Yeah.
Let's see what we got here. Does Connie give you much advice during the race weekend? Honestly, like, he's so busy and involved with Richie Crampton's car that, I'll go over there and say hello or see how things are going, but like, I don't think people realize like how dedicated he is to that car and how much he's involved with it, as far as calling the tune-up and what have you. You go over there, like, he's in front of the computer from the time he gets to the track to the time he leaves, basically.
Yeah. His involvement, with a lot of the teams, it's pretty impressive.
Right.
Just watching how the guy works, sometimes you talk to him and he has a hard time hearing you. Sometimes you see him walking around and he's kind of bracing himself up against the wall. But when you talk to him about drag racing, this guy, man, he's so sharp.
Yeah.
He gets it. He understands it. He knows everything about these things. I mean, obviously he's done it his whole life, but that's what really impressed me when I came over to the Coletta camp last year and working with Connie on that race car is the detail that he has and how sharp he is with it. And yeah, there was a lot of times that he would set me down and show me things on the race pack and show certain things about the race car to help improve me as a driver. And it's all right.
Right. Yeah, it's amazing, like, as the technology changes, and let's not forget, like, he's 80 years old. Like, he stays up to date with all that. I mean, it's pretty wild.
It's awesome to see.
Still winning races.
And still winning races. And still very, very involved, heavily involved, not only his race team, but with the NHRA.
Yeah. On
progressing the sport, making it a better sport, making it better for the next generation that's coming up.
Right, yeah. He's extremely passionate about our sport and wants to see it succeed for sure. All right, we got, so Richmond versus Vegas, new surface, same, or is one better than the other? I got to say Richmond because it's all concrete.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I definitely think, I mean, I was very impressed going to Richmond. Not to take away from Vegas, because Vegas Vegas was good.
Yeah, it was smooth.
Yeah, it was really good. So I'm gonna say Virginia, but definitely not to take anything away from Vegas.
Right. Yeah, and the only thing about Vegas is anytime that you got the transition from concrete to asphalt, it just takes time for the asphalt to take the rubber. Where that asphalt was brand new when we got there, and it's going to take multiple races, a year or two before it finally gets enough rubber built up on it to where the asphalt's going to be good enough to hook up on.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree with that.
But yeah, both are good. Both are the smoothest tracks on the tour right now. Are you guys happy where you are in points right now? I mean,
no.
We moved up a spot this weekend, so I was happy about that. But at the same time, like, I want to win the race. I want to move up even more. And I know you're not happy.
Yeah, and it's not to take anything away from the team. I mean, but it's just where we're at. Obviously you don't want to be on the outside of the top 10. We actually fell back to 11th, but I mean, that's not to take anything away from where we're at right now. But if you're not first, you're not ever satisfied. And even if you're first place, you're still not satisfied because you're still trying to. There's always a chance of running is drag racing full circle. So if you go out there and have a couple good races, you know that there's going to be a couple bad races coming. So you're never really, as a competitive person, you're never really satisfied because you're either catching up, trying to progress to get better, or you're at the top trying to progress, take it to the next level.
Yeah, you want to stay like light years above who's behind you.
And leave everybody in the dust.
Right. That's how I feel. Like, I want to go out there and dominate.
Yeah.
People ask, you want to win on hole shots? Like, no, I want to leave on them and outrun them.
Yeah. I mean, I think that a lot of the race teams and a lot of the drivers all say, unless if you're winning 24 races a year.
Right. Yeah. Whenever somebody makes a good run, they interview the crew chief. You never, ever hear the crew chief say, yeah, that's what we were trying to run.
Yeah.
No, that's usually like they want to run like 200s better.
Yeah, a lot of times that's the cool thing about our sport is there's always room for improvement. So you're constantly challenging yourself. You're constantly challenging the race car, the team, everything to progress to be better.
Absolutely. Here's a good one. Who from the sportsman class would you like to see come up to the pro class?
That's a good one.
To me, somebody like Justin Lamb, like he could get it done.
Justin Lamb is probably one of the absolute best drivers right now. I think now I know winning both championships last year in stock and super stock, and he made it known that he wasn't going to come out and compete for a championship, that he was just primarily going to run the national events this year. But I think if I remember correctly, he's been to 4 national events and won 3 of them.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
So yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying is a lot of these drivers in the sportsman ranks, man, like there are some badass drivers that could drive circles around a lot of us. And but I think putting him in like a pro stock car,
right? That's what I was thinking.
He'd be badass at that. I think who I'd like to see come up and who I think would do a really good job in a class like funny car. I'm going to say Sean Bellemere and I know Shane Westerfield. He's done a little bit working with Del Worsham, but I think that those two drivers would be solid candidates for Rookie of the Year coming out in their first year. But I think I definitely think that those two drivers are very worthy of racing in top fuel class.
Yeah, they're driving one of the hardest cars in all of drag racing, alcohol funny car, and those two, like, you can guarantee that they're going to leave on whoever they're racing against 90% of the time.
They drive good, man. I mean, like I said, Bellemere and Westerfield, they crush the tree.
Yeah, it's impressive watching them.
And they're both, I believe they're both up in the points. I haven't checked the alcohol funny car points in a while, but yeah, they both drive alcohol funny car right now. They both do a great job. I think it'd be awesome to see guys like that come up. And plus, those are all old junior drag racers.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that to me, like, that shows what the Junior Drag Racing League does. It definitely prepares the youth to become better racers. And I feel like there's so many racers, probably now at bracket races and sportsman racing in the super classes and stock and super stock, that come out of the junior dragsters that are really good racers.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing progressing the sport for the next generation is being able to have more companies involved and to grow the sport and to have more opportunities. Because I think I honestly believe that if there was more rides available, I think that you would see a lot more drivers like that, talent-based drivers coming into the sport, not necessarily paying their way to get a ride, but right. you would see a lot of these drivers coming up through the junior drag race, through the sportsman ranks, and then progressing into the top field class.
We talked about this on the way to Bristol, like how NASCAR has their feeder series into the Cup series, and Cup drivers starting their own teams to look for those next best guys, like Dale Jr. when he was driving for Hendricks started Junior Motorsports, kind of a feeder series, to where, like, if we could do that, like, that would be so cool to have either alcohol funny car or an A fuel car or a blown alcohol dragster to be able to, like, take somebody that might not have the opportunity to make it to the professional level because they don't come from a rich family or they don't know how to market themselves or whatever. Just give them that opportunity to showcase their talent, and, like, the higher up teams might, hey, this is the next big deal right here.
Yeah, and I definitely think that if you went off of like a talent thing like that, there's so many talented drivers in the Sportsman Series that if there was the opportunity, man, they could be fielding 32 car fields.
Oh, for sure.
There's, like I said, it's a lot of it, unfortunately, goes a little bit unnoticed in those Sportsman Series, but that's one thing that I'm constantly, a lot of the fans come to the ropes, saying that about, like, the Sportsman Series, I don't really get it, and with the bracket racing and the index racing, but there's a lot of just absolutely talented drivers in those classes that deserve a lot of recognition. And I think it goes back to where you see a lot of these guys, man, they came up through the junior ranks and they went through that, national champions through the junior ranks, going up into the sportsman ranks, and there's I can't stress that enough how much talent there is in the sportsman ranks right now. Yeah, and back to, if we could have that team, that feeder team, like, I feel like that would also draw good attention to that series if a pro driver could go back and run some of those races as well. Like, say you're double entered, you're going to run A fuel and your funny car at a national event, or you're going to go to this divisional race on an off weekend. Like, they can help promote that race knowing that you're going to be there driving in that class, and that gets sponsors' attention. Also, maybe that sponsor will stick to that driver and help move them up to the next level. Yeah, and I think it's kind of cool, like guys like Christopher Bell or, some guys that we've been able to meet, you watch them come up through these feeder systems,
Right.
and obviously there's a lot of attention drawn to that. And we work with a few of these guys, through Toyota and all that. But it's kind of neat to see them come up through the ranks, because obviously there's a lot of attention drawn to that, and Toyota's helped pushing them through the ranks,
Right.
and help paying their way to get through as a sponsor. But it's like then you watch these guys go up through the Truck Series, through the Xfinity Series, into the NASCAR, and it's just it's an awesome progression to watch them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, anything else we need to touch on here?
We got Rick says, what's Connie's opinion on the track prep?
I don't know, Rick. You got to ask Connie that one.
He's not happy.
Yeah, I can't say that he's in favor of it.
Yeah.
The dude, like, his tune-up is not conducive of what's going on right now.
Connie's tune-up is balls to the wall every run. So when he runs Friday night, the track's coming to him.
Yeah, he wants to be able to go out there and run 360s whenever possible, and we can't do that right now. So there's your answer.
Exactly. All or nothing, man. That's Connie's mentality, and you love him for it, because when it works, it pays off, and you get race wins.
Exactly, yeah. When he gets rolling, like, he can't be touched at that given point. I mean, there's times you'll go out there, say Sonoma, where it's hot and nasty, and he'll go out there and rip off a run on Saturday that might be 500s ahead of the next guy. You're like, where the hell did that come from?
Yeah, and I know, you had that, I believe, in your last year driving dragsters, where like the last couple races, you were just like ripping off runs. I mean, that were kind of untouched. I mean, you're 300-400s faster than a lot of people.
Right, like he would make his better run like during the day and not on the night run when everybody else is. Like, that's a kind of like, well, this dude's out of control.
Oh yeah.
Like, I just feel like, he'll push. He's good about pushing others to the next level when he does stuff like that. But that's why we love him and love driving for him.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. All right, guys. Well, I think that's going to do it for today's show. Obviously, keep back. We're going to keep doing updates. Make sure to check out our website, nomexeffect.com. Heading to Norwalk next week, so we'll do a show here. Probably do a show here in the next 2 weeks again for you guys. Keep you guys updated. Make sure to send in your questions. You can go to the website, send in your questions on the website, or you can email us at nomexeffect@gmail.com. Make sure to go on, get your merchandise.
We finally got a store for you guys to go buy stuff. We got a fantasy deal in the works for the website.
Oh, yeah. That's something that we've... so we forgot to bring this up on the show, is that I know we've done it a little bit on Facebook with the fantasy deal, but what we want to do is we want to create like a fantasy drag racing league, and we want to do it through the website. And what we want to do is you pick a winner and runner-up of Top Fuel, a winner runner-up of Funny Car, winner runner-up of Pro Stock. The tiebreaker is going to be the winning reaction time in Top Fuel. You get 2 points if you pick a winner, 1 point if you pick a runner-up. And what we want to do is we want to give Nomex Effect gear away. So when you go in and you get your picks in, either pick if you win, pick a hat, pick a t-shirt. The winner will make sure to send you a hat or a t-shirt. You choose. But I think it's kind of a cool way to get the fans involved in the sport.
Absolutely.
Root for your drivers. Root for the people that you pick. I know it's always awesome. They used to have a fantasy drag racing league, and it was always cool to get the feedback from the fans of a guy would be coming up in a John Force t-shirt or a Tony Schumacher U.S. Army jacket and saying, I'm rooting for you this weekend. I picked you in fantasy. So I think it's kind of cool to have that interaction with the fans, create new fans, create kind of a cool thing. It's, like I said, it's always neat to have fans come up and, man, I was betting on you in the stands and you won me money. So bet on whoever. We're not going to be biased. You can pick us. We'll do the best job that we can. Pick whoever you want, but you get some Nomex Effect swag if you win.
Yeah, you don't have to pick us just because you follow the show and all that. We're not going to get upset.
No, totally unbiased opinion. So But thank you guys for joining in. Thank you guys for listening to us on Nomex Effect, and make sure you guys stay tuned.